In a piece published in the China Business Review, Lee Hamilton looks back on the developments in U.S.-China relations over the past 30 years and anticipates the difficulties that lie ahead. Today, we are going to discuss about the U.S. and China relations. So first, subscribe to our channel and then continue. The most complicated bilateral relationship for the United States is with China. Sino-American relations have undergone an astonishing transition over the past 30 years, moving from hostility and conflict to open communication and productive partnership. These two enormous and complex nations have discovered areas of agreement in trade, investing, and more recently, security. However, important concerns remain unresolved, and as China develops into an economic superpower, a military force in Asia, and a possible competitor to American hegemony, there is a real risk of dangerous divergence. There are several uncertainties surrounding Sino-American relations' future. Will Taiwan formally renounce its ties to the People's Republic of China, or will it remain a part of it? Will Chinese armaments increase in response to American missile defense, or will relations and collaboration between the two military improve? Will China experience significant political change, or will China's one-party system be able to survive in a market economy? Will China turn out to be a welcoming nation for human rights, or will it continue to be a rigid, state-run society? There is genuine uncertainty surrounding these and other important issues, and Chinese and American leaders still have important decisions to make. The leaders of tomorrow can best meet these problems by actively pursuing shared interests, if the past 30 years offer any indication. The bonds of economics. The economic realm has been the main area of overlap between the objectives of the U.S. and China. China's will to rise to economic dominance is astounding. Over the previous 10 years, growth rates have routinely approached 10% annually, and in 2002, China received more than $50 billion in international investment. China today has 2 million private businesses, a growing middle class, and significant infrastructure development plans. China is a major regional economic force and a hub for manufacturing, especially now that the Japanese economy is stagnant. The partnership between the United States and China is largely to thank for the amount of economic growth and openness in China today, which was unimaginable 30 years ago. There has been a great deal of agreement in many areas of shared interest between the two nations on trade and investment. China has sought U.S. investment, technology, and backing for China's entry into international trade systems, while the United States has pursued economic possibilities, exports, and profits in China. From most favored nation status in the 1980s and 1990s through China's entry into the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001, U.S. support for trade and investment in China has developed. In exchange, China has shown a willingness to liberalize its state-owned economy by drastically lowering tariffs, updating legal frameworks, and allowing for increased private ownership, property rights, and transparency. However, China still has to make significant economic reforms. China has a patchy record of adhering to WTO rules so far, and it needs to do more to strengthen the protection of intellectual property rights, remove import restrictions on agricultural products, do away with laws that discriminate against foreign goods, and set up more effective and tenacious independent regulatory organizations. Inflexible state-owned businesses, subprime mortgages in state banks, underfunded pension plans, and pervasive corruption are other ongoing issues in China. However, the economy of the early 1970s still has nothing in common with that of the dynamic and developing China of today. Beyond the numbers, this trend has strengthened Sino-American links by allowing Americans and Chinese to conduct business, travel to one another's nations, partake in mutual sports entertainment, and buy for the same name brand products. Despite the expansion of economic collaboration, the lack of political reform in China has proven to be a barrier to closer Sino-American connections. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has maintained a one-party system with a small number of people holding most of the power and repressing dissent. Even though China is undergoing a tremendous transformation, the average Chinese person has virtually little influence over it. As the incompatibility of a free market and one-party rule becomes clear, this balancing act has become more challenging. China may be on the verge of a crisis in governance, with the party's authority eroding, the state's capabilities declining, and tensions between the government and society escalating. According to many observers, China must immediately put into place a plan for political reform that includes legislative measures, elections for the judicial system, and the enfranchisement of civil society. However, the CCP is tenacious and durable, and American policymakers have found it challenging to choose between cooperating with a mostly repressive organization and fostering potentially unstable dissent. Political change. The United States has fought valiantly to promote political and human rights reform in China. None of our attempts at private diplomacy, public chastisement, or economic sanctions have produced very pleasing outcomes. China continues to have some of the strictest restrictions on all types of human rights, including civil, political, women's, religious, and ethnic rights. Because Chinese and Americans approach the problem from different angles, it is a challenging one. Many Chinese counter that economic and social rights are more important than political freedoms, and that the economic progress of the last 25 years therefore represents an impressive advance in human rights. Americans see a stifling authoritarian government that denies sometimes brutally universal rights and freedoms. The expansion of economic openness offers a chance for China's human rights. As new individuals and ideas cross the border, the likelihood of corresponding political and social reform increases. But until there is a genuine political shift in China, Americans and American officials will continue to have a grave concern about human rights. Security. Chinese and American politicians are also concerned about a number of security-related issues. The foremost of them is Taiwan's future, which continues to be the most tense issue in the relationship between the United States and China. China has been steadfast in seeking military buildups across the Taiwan Strait and tighter ties in trade and commerce, with the island at the same time as asserting its claim to Taiwan. The United States officially adheres to the One China policy, and despite early Bush administration statements, we have generally maintained strategic ambiguity with regard to Taiwan. We have prevented Taiwan from declaring independence while keeping China guessing about how the United States will react to an unprovoked Chinese offensive. Both sides have strong, deeply ingrained feelings on Taiwan, which has occasionally sparked inflammatory language and raised tensions. Avoiding a military clash over Taiwan has been and should continue to be a major objective on all sides. With regard to Taiwan, both China and the United States should refrain from inciting conflict by using force to compel the island to join the mainland. Although Taiwan's future is still uncertain, it should be resolved peacefully through diplomacy, trade, and the passage of time rather than by conflict. The development and spread of weapons technology has been another topic of contention between the United States and China. China has pursued a minimal nuclear deterrence capacity because it is one of the few countries that can cause the United States significant nuclear damage. China has also been charged by the United States with transferring lethal weapons and missile technology to nations like Pakistan and North Korea. The successful inclusion of China into numerous non-proliferation regimes during the 1990s and China's recent announcement of a strategy to restrict its exports of missiles and other dual-use technologies have helped to ease tensions somewhat. However, the United States' aspirations to construct a missile defense system and China's aim to improve its nuclear capacity guarantee that difficult times are ahead. Any attempt by the United States to disable China's deterrent through a missile shield will incite Beijing, and the United States will resist a nuclear armaments buildup in East Asia. The Korean Peninsula and Taiwan are two potential flashpoints that might make matters worse. To prevent misunderstanding and mistrust from growing into something more dangerous, communication between the military and civilian leadership of both countries is essential. Since the war on terrorism reshaped the U.S.-China relationship, the likelihood of a fruitful and ongoing communication has been somewhat increased. The shared strategic concern of terrorism has resulted in practical cooperation, including intelligence sharing, Chinese assistance for the American-led fight in Afghanistan, and American backing for China's assault on Islamic separatists in China's western provinces. As of the end of 2002, there was also a more cordial atmosphere between the two countries as the U.S. and China re-established military relations, supported the UN resolution on Iraq, and agreed to work together to defuse the North Korean situation. As China proceeded toward a change in leadership, PRC President Jiang Zemin made it a priority to show improved ties and cooperation between the United States and China in the fight against terrorism. In the coming months and years, the new Chinese leadership and incoming President Hu Jintao will need to settle any internal disputes and develop their own stance on the United States and foreign policy. It is unclear how this strategy would differ from Jiang's strategy and how much Jiang will continue to be involved in security and diplomatic affairs. The Bush administration has opted to concentrate on cooperating with China on issues of shared concern because China appears to have accepted the fact of American preeminence for the time being. So share your feedback with us in the comments about the video, and subscribe to our channel if you're interested to watch more.